Patricia. I'm your reader. Some of you know me as Tina. Not really. Well, welcome. Thank you, Sharon, wherever you went for that lovely song. The theme for 2025 is Rising Higher and Growing Deeper. The theme for January is Stretching into Possibility. Our topic for today is God's nature is our nature. Christian Larson reminds us to realize that we are one with God in spirit and in truth. He reminds us to realize that we're also one with the life, the divinity, and the perfection of God. And therefore, we are as God is. What is in God is in us. We live the same life that God lives, and since there can be no imperfection in God's life, there can be no imperfection in our life. So let's affirm together, I am a radiant reflection of divine love and wisdom. So let's be very intentional now and welcome and open our hearts and our minds to our wonderful Dr. Reverend Kathleen, who will be speaking Spirit's message through her right now.
So here we are. I think I'll start with a story. This is a story about the archangel Gabriel having a conversation with God. And God had come up with a new creation, and Archangel Gabriel said, well, what is this? And God said, it's a human. And then Gabriel points to the top of the being and said, well, what's that? And God said, well, those are eyes, and they're so that the human can experience the unfolding of creation. And then he said, well, what are those? And God said, well, those are hands. Hands are so that humans can create like I do. And then Gabriel looked, pointed down here, and said, well, what are those? And God kind of smirks and smiles and says, well, that's a big toe actually, and that's for furniture. And Gabriel said, for furniture? And God says, trust me, it will be hilarious. Right? Yeah. So, as we embark on this rising higher and growing deeper in 2025, we tend to start our year with revisiting the spiritual principles that are our foundation. And if anybody wants to deepen into those basic spiritual principles, there is a section in the Science of Mind textbook, section Roman numeral 1 through Roman numeral 4 of the Science of Mind textbook. It's the very beginning. And they're titled The Thing Itself, which is another way of saying God. And Ernest Holmes used the thing itself because he had a lot of people saying, well, I don't like that word God. It has all these connotations. And so he said, well, just call it, he said, actually, you can call it a potato, it doesn't matter. But, he used the term the thing itself. The way it works is the next one, what it does and how to use it. So how we use universal law. So as we expand in our understanding of these principles, these core principles, and we then begin to apply them in our lives, what will happen then is the rising of consciousness, the deepening into the awareness of who we are in truth. And so what does that mean? That means our lives begin to reflect that good. As within, so without is the principle. So today our focus is on God's nature is our nature. And that beautiful quote by Christian Larson said it all and said it so beautifully. This is where we come to a place of understanding that there is no difference, separation between ourselves and God. If God is all there is, and we know from quantum physics that supports this, there's one infinite unified field from which all life arises, one universal mind, you could say that. And so our idea of God is much more expanded. It's not some being off in the sky governing things, but there's this tremendous presence, omnipresence, omnipotence, omniscience, from which all life emanates, and we are that presence in essence. And multiplicity. There's so many of us, and yet we are all rooted in that same essence. So, as we do this, as we truly begin to own who we are in truth, what happens then is we begin to live from that true self. And we are therefore empowered to participate in the creation of our experience. So our nature is God's nature. And so because God is all there is, and we are that creative genius then individualized in essence, it's important to ask ourselves, what do we believe about God, this grand universal intelligence? Do we perceive God as withholding, judgmental, and punishing? That's the Old Testament version of God, right? Do we believe in that? Because if we do, our lives will reflect that. Or do we believe in God as generous, creative, loving, accepting? If we believe in that, our lives will reflect that. And that means that's who we are as well. Generous, creative, loving, accepting. And our beliefs, we know, shape our reality. So it's important to take the time and really investigate what is it we are believing about the overarching universal presence, because that's what we're believing about ourselves. There's no separation. So what do you choose to believe? What do you choose to believe? Ernest Holmes, in one of these beginning sections of the book, the Science of Mind textbook, says, to suppose that the creative intelligence of the universe would create us in bondage and leave us bound would be a dishonor to the creative power which we call God. We see abundance in the universe. The earth contains untold riches, and the very air is vibrant with power. Why then does humanity seem to be weak, poor, and afraid? That's the question he asks, and he says, because he knows that's what people will say. So why is this? He said, the divine plan is one of freedom. Bondage is not God ordained. Freedom is the birthright of every living soul. All instinctively feel this, and thus the inherent nature of humanity is forever seeking to express itself in terms of freedom. So what does all that mean? If we are free, if bondage is not our birthright, but freedom is, then how do we get into this state of feeling like we're limited, or we lack things, and so on? It's social conditioning. It begins from childhood. And the beauty of it is because we have freedom of choice, and we have the And we have the ability to use the law of creation through the power of our word. We are able to then dismantle the limiting beliefs that stand in the way and move forward into a more graceful, expansive life. We get to rise higher in consciousness, grow deeper into our spirit essence, and therefore create something new, create a greater expression of our divinity, more love, more peace, more joy, more wisdom, more intelligence, more abundance, a life of prosperity. So that's freedom. So using that law of creation then is our way to that freedom, that expression of that freedom. And that means that we get to not only let go of the limiting patterns, but also stretch into new possibilities, which is our theme for this month, stretching into possibility. Ernest Holmes says this. I love this. He says, "We are chemists in the laboratory of the infinite." Isn't that cool? We are chemists in the laboratory of the infinite. What then, he says, shall we create? Are we fully embracing our creative power that resides in us? I mean, are we? Are you fully embracing that creative power? It's unbelievable how powerful we are as individual beings, individualized expressions of the divine. What does that mean to you? Are you truly consciously exercising that creative power in a way that supports not only your highest good, but the highest good of all of those around you and in our world? So our spiritual journey then challenges us to expand our awareness of who we are as the activity of the creative genius of God individualized, and to stretch into new possibilities. And so one of my ways of stretching into new possibilities, and Sharon mentioned it earlier, was to ask if I could be a part of the house band and just, do some backup vocals, some harmonies and things like that, which is something I did years ago when I was a part of other spiritual communities. And so she graciously said yes, and so I'm stepping into this, and it's a little tentative at first, I understand that, but my intention is to continue to grow in strength and confidence and regain that confidence that I had years ago when I did this like every Sunday. And so I encourage you to ask yourself, how is it that I feel called to stretch into new possibilities? What are the ways that you feel called? And give yourself an opportunity to just listen and then stretch. And stretch means stepping outside your comfort zone, right? It does. So Ernest Holmes says, we do not create laws and principles, but we discover and make use of them. So our role then is to recognize these universal laws. Universal law of creation is the key one. And to use it for your good and for the good of others. And then we become, rather than reactors, and it doesn't mean we'll never react again, because certainly I have moments of reacting. There was a lot of reaction going on this morning when we realized the heat wasn't working properly. But then the key is to move back into creation, move from reactor into creator. Is to recognize, oh, I'm getting triggered, reclaim my power, and to get back into creation. So that's what I did when I realized, okay, it's cold. Reclaim my power from that, go back into the silence for a moment, and what is my part into creating a sense of warmth even when it's not that warm in this room. And all of you are bringing such beautiful warmth that I feel, and I'm so grateful for it. All right. So I'd like to end this with a story. This is a story told by one of my colleagues, one of my fellow ministers. He told the story of one time when he was at IKEA with his granddaughter, his 5-year-old granddaughter, and she was playing in the playground, the play area that they have in IKEA, and he was watching her, and all of a sudden she looked at this little boy whose shoelaces were kind of flopping all over the place, and she went like this, told him to stop. So he stopped. She walked up to him, got down on her knees, and tied his shoes. And keep in mind, he said she had just learned to tie her own shoes. And so all of this happened very silently. She went like this, he stopped, she tied them, and then they smiled at each other very shyly and then ran off in different directions. So as you were listening to that story, what are the God qualities, the nature of God that showed up in the grandfather, the granddaughter, the 5-year-old granddaughter, and the little boy? And Dan is going to put up some God qualities for you. Oh, good, he did. And I invite you to turn to one or two other people and discuss that. What qualities showed up in the grandfather, the little girl, and the boy? What were expressed? So find somebody to share with. Dwayne is right behind you, Tisha. Completion. Lovely. Thank you. And then I'm going to ask you to just call out some of the God qualities that you recognized. Let's do the grandfather first. Just call them out. What did you notice? Uh-huh. Wisdom, yeah. Beautiful. Wisdom to see all of that arising. Okay, how about the little girl? Uh-huh. What did you say, Catherine? Care. Mm-hmm. Generosity. Mm-hmm. Creativity. Beautiful. And how about the little boy? Trust. Gratitude. Oh, trust. Yeah. Gratitude. Yeah. Even though he didn't say he was grateful, the smile said it all, right? Harmony between the kids. Yeah, I was thinking about, that trust, that amazing amount of trust that had to take place when she told him to stop, and then he stopped. Yeah. Beautiful. Just so much of the divine going on. And that's what I'm going to be encouraging you to do this week and throughout the year, is to begin to notice how the nature of God is showing up as you, as all of those around you. I mean, even just turning to a neighbor and having the discussion showed something about your God nature, right? What did it show? Vulnerability. Uh-huh. And trust, which means trust. Connection. Community. And oneness. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Teaching. Uh-huh. Curiosity. Wonder. Wow. What would it be? Just living in the question. What did you say? Expression. The expression of the divine. Beautiful. So let's turn within in prayer. And take a moment and just anchor into what we are taking with us today from this message before I begin the prayer. What is it that I am to take with me from this message today? And for me, it's just to continue to consciously recognize and acknowledge the presence of God in all beings as these various qualities. So knowing in this beautiful, perfect, and present moment that all there is one source, one life, one presence, one power, I awaken more fully than ever before that I am the life of God, individualized. I represent all, and I reflect all that God is. All love, all peace, all wisdom, all joy, all intelligence, all light, that divine creator in expression. And I know also that that is happening with each and every person in this room and all over the planet, that there is this upwelling of the qualities and the attributes of the divine. Each and every moment as we walk around, we are living, moving, breathing creators, co-creators with spirit. We are living, moving, breathing beings of great wisdom and wholeness and perfection and beauty and grace and wonder and awe. And we get to participate, therefore, in this thing called creation. We get to be more conscious than ever before, rather than walking around unconsciously reacting and thinking that it's something outside of ourselves. We are now moving into that place of empowerment, which means shaping our own reality by shaping our own beliefs. So I'm so grateful for this awareness of our freedom, of the law of creation, of the nature of our being, and with a great sense of gratefulness, I release this word